Humans have always been both fascinated and terrified by marine attacks, especially those involving sharks. These strong, sometimes misunderstood predators are essential to the upkeep of aquatic ecosystems. Although they have a terrifying reputation, shark attacks on people are actually quite uncommon. Even though there is still little chance of an attack, being aware of shark behavior and giving them space can significantly lessen the likelihood of hazardous situations in the water. Here are 6 stories. In Half Moon Bay, California, a well-liked beach town situated just south of San Francisco, the sun was shining brightly. Large predators, particularly great white sharks, were known to hunt in the Pacific waters off the coast of California. On that day, a group of friends were having a late summer reunion among the beachgoers. With her friends, Dolores Dee Dee Tunstall, a 300-pound woman renowned for her contagious laugh and exuberant demeanor, had arrived. Dee Dee was a fearless, gregarious woman who had always been willing to embrace every moment of life. Moments like these, with the sun and sand and the company of close friends, were what she lived for. Ignorant of the sinister presence lurking beneath the surface, Dee Dee and her friends laughed and splashed into the shallow waters. If one were to observe from the shore, the day would have appeared ideal for swimming due to the calm tide and gentle waves. But hidden in the deeper waters just beyond the surf were shadows that they were unable to see. After hours of patrolling the waters, the enormous 16-foot great white shark finally surfaced. It appeared that this specific shark went closer to the coast today than it usually does. It's possible that the activity in the water confused it, or that the movement of something bigger than usual attracted it. When the first indication of danger materialized, it was around evening, and Dee Dee and her friends were chest-deep in the water. A short distance from the group, a distinct and pointed fin broke the surface. It was too late when a couple of beachgoers noticed and started pointing. By now, the shark had become fixated on its prey. The attack came on with terrifying rapidity. Dee Dee and her friends were laughing for one moment, and then she was pulled underwater with such force that her friends could hardly believe what had happened. Her lower body was gripped by the shark's strong jaws, which were cutting through bone and flesh like paper. The water immediately became hazy with blood, transforming the calm waves into a terrifying red dream. Onlookers yelled and gestured toward the water as panic broke out on the beach. For a split second, Dee Dee's friends were stunned and started yelling for assistance. The beachside lifeguards responded right away, sounding their whistles and launching their rescue boats. However, the shark was far from finished. It briefly came to the surface and began thrashing wildly as it tore into Dee's body. Her large frame, usually so full of life, now appeared helpless in the teeth of the beast, according to witnesses who described the horrific scene in chilling detail. The approximately 2,000-pound predator was too strong for Dee Dee, even though she was small. The shark brutally compressed Dee Dee's legs with its jaws, which were made to break seal bones. Witnessing the shark shake her like a rag doll and bite her was terrifying due to its sheer power. Upon arriving at her location, the lifeguards were unable to assist her. Just a trail of blood and the mutilated remnants of Dee Dee's body remained after the shark vanished into the depths. She was submerged in blood-filled water, and the rescue crew struggled to pull her lifeless body onto the boat while the waves broke against them. Even though paramedics were waiting on the beach, it was obvious that Dee Dee had passed away from her wounds long before she got there. Her friends fell to the sand, still in shock, and screamed with dismay. A child would occasionally cry out, and the distant cries of seagulls were the only audible sounds from the once cheerful and serene beach. The small coastal town was thrown into a media frenzy as the news spread. A great white shark attacking someone so close to the coast was not unheard of, but it was uncommon, particularly in shallow waters like the ones Dee Dee had been swimming in. Local news outlets carried round-the-clock coverage for weeks, showcasing aerial photos of the beaches and speaking with witnesses. Formerly a tranquil summer getaway, the town has become a popular destination for both reporters and shark enthusiasts. Investigating the attack, authorities sought to determine why the shark had gone so near the coast. Marine biologists have tended to note that great white attacks on people frequently result from a case of mistaken identity. Large individuals wading through the water would look like seals or other prey to sharks. That explanation, however, was insufficient to allay the locals' fears. Attendance at the beach fell off during the next few weeks. Along the coast, lifeguards stepped up their patrols and posted signs alerting people to shark activity. They also searched the waters for any indications of danger. The increasing fear was fueled by local fishermen who claimed to have seen more sharks than usual. Dee's friends found it difficult to accept what had happened because they were still healing from the trauma of seeing her brutally killed. A lifetime of nightmares now lay ahead of them. They had come to the beach for a carefree day of fun. They would never forget the sight of their friend being ripped apart by a creature from the deep. While some locals claimed that humans were invading the shark's natural habitat, others argued that more shark hunting was necessary in the wake of the attack to stop similar incidents in the future. There was much discussion about who was to blame, the sharks or the humans. But for those who had been at the beach that day, there was no doubt. The water had taken a human life, and it had done so with terrifying efficiency. Regarding Dee Dee, her stories from friends and family carried on her legacy. She had been larger than life in every way, and her legacy would live on in the town long after she passed away. However, her terrible demise served as a sobering reminder of the perils that awaited humanity, no matter how big, just beneath the ocean's surface. Although the tranquil waters of Half Moon Bay eventually returned, the town would be plagued by the memory of that day for years to come. The lush volcanic landmass that is Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean was full of its typical charm in the early summer of 2010. Reunion Island, a French overseas department, had long drawn tourists drawn by its striking scenery, jagged cliffs and turquoise waters. This was the environment in which Céline Marceau, a 27-year-old French traveler from Lyon, set out on what was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Céline, who adored the ocean and swims a lot, had always wanted to see the beautiful beaches of Reunion. The fifth day found her at Boucan Cano, a well-known beach on the island's western coast, following 4 days spent exploring the island's deep forests and imposing waterfalls. Céline chose to swim a little further out past the buoys because the designated swimming area was crowded, and she was yearning for a more tranquil swim. She soon felt at ease with the ocean's calming rhythm and the soft lull of the waves. Unaware that there was movement beneath her, she drifted to her back and stared up at the limitless blue sky. This tiger shark was no exception to the rule that these animals were nocturnal and frequently circled their prey from below. It was now silently approaching, initially wary and inquisitive after becoming drawn to the faint vibrations produced by Céline's movements. Without warning, the first bite occurred. Céline felt a sharp pain in her right leg that came on suddenly, and then she felt a strong tug that took her underwater. Her understanding of the situation was momentarily clouded. She surmised that she had become entangled in seaweed or possibly a submerged current. But as her blood stained the surrounding water, she peered down and saw the massive striped figure gliding beneath her, the unmistakable shadow of the shark. She felt a wave of panic as the situation reality hit her. She was helpless to kick the shark off because its strong jaws were locked around her leg. It seemed like a prison, the water that had once been so soothing. The shark was too powerful, despite her gut feeling, to swim to the surface. With every second that went by, the water's pressure increased, and it pulled her down further. Her mouth filled with salt water as she attempted to scream. Someone had been surfing the waves nearby. Arnaud Leroux, a seasoned local surfer who had spent the majority of his life on the island, was one of them. He was familiar with the telltale symptoms of a shark attack, such as the abrupt flailing and the eerie silence that ensues. He paddled straight toward Céline after seeing her struggle and yelling for the others to follow. Another sharp tug caused Céline's vision to blur. The shark had momentarily freed her before biting her again, this time with greater force. This time it grabbed her left thigh, spinning her around in the water with the force of the blow. Her vitality was diminishing and her blood loss was occurring quickly. She felt as though she was drifting into unconsciousness as the world around her slowed and the sounds of the ocean were muffled. Then she noticed that Arnaud and the other surfers were hurrying in her direction through the haze. Right before the shark launched another attack, they got to her. Armed only with his surfboard, Arnaud used a common deterrent method by slamming it against the shark's muzzle. The shark staggered back, startled for a moment, and Céline felt the pressure on her leg ease. In no time at all, the surfers lifted her onto one of the boards and started rowing frantically back towards the coast. Previously, the beach was a peaceful spot, but now it is a chaotic place. As the group approached, lifeguards and onlookers hurried to help. By the time Celine's legs were bloodied and mangled, she was hardly conscious when they got to the beach. While waiting for the ambulance to arrive, a lifeguard named Marc Dupuis started providing first aid right away, applying tourniquets to her legs to stop the bleeding. The crowd that had gathered stood in stunned silence, watching as the paramedics arrived and rushed her to the hospital. In the community, the attack caused shockwaves. Reunion Island has always been a beautiful place, but it was getting harder to ignore how frequently sharks were attacked. The incident sparked a renewed debate about whether stricter safety regulations should be put in place, which presented local authorities with an increasingly dire situation. While some argued that humans should protect sharks' natural habitat, others called for the eradication of sharks. Celine would never fully regain her mobility despite undergoing numerous surgeries to save her legs. She sustained severe emotional and physical scars as a result of the attack. After leaving the hospital, her ideal vacation had become a nightmare, so she went back to France. She expressed her gratitude to Arnaud and the surfers who had saved her life in interviews, where she discussed the impermanence of life and the randomness of fate. The attack on Celine served as a sobering reminder of the risks that existed beneath the surface, risks that even seasoned seafarers could not have foreseen. Reunion Island imposed tighter safety measures in the years that followed the assault. During certain seasons of the year when shark activity was exceptionally high, many beaches were closed and more shark nets were installed. But with no clear solution in sight, the discussion about how to strike a balance between tourism and the island's natural ecology persisted. Celine Marceau's encounter with the tiger shark forever changed the Reunion Island's history, which served as a warning to all visitors that even paradise could have dangerous moments. A group of free divers made an expedition off the coast of Bimini, a small Bahamas district renowned for its vibrant coral reefs and crystal-clear waters, in the summer of 2007. Schools of vibrant fish, intricate coral formations, and occasionally sharks were all abundant in the island's waters. While attacks by sharks were uncommon, they were nonetheless frequently sighted. Hammerhead sharks, in particular, were more recognized for their inquisitive nature than their viciousness. The divers, under the guidance of experienced explorer Karsten Vale, were conducting a routine dive to investigate Tiger Beach, a location well known for its rich marine biodiversity and also favored by large predators. Karsten had been diving here for years and was accompanied by two seasoned divers, Tasha Veldren, a marine photographer who had traveled the globe taking pictures of underwater life, and Alaric Rick Calloway, a former Navy diver with steely nerves. Lyle Rook, who had joined the team to record the dive on video, was the fourth member of the group and was a novice but eager to learn. The kind of quiet morning that left the ocean appearing glassy. Underneath the water, the coral was illuminated by the sun's beams of light that danced across its surface. Following a quick conversation on the boat, the divers prepared themselves and left the surface world behind, plunging below the surface. The dive was typical at first. Encircled by the hum of the ocean, they glided through the warm turquoise water with ease. As fish darted in and out of the coral, the divers gestured to one another, identifying the different kinds they had seen. Using her underwater camera, Tasha was busy taking pictures of the reef, capturing its vibrant colors. They followed Karsten's lead as she led them farther down to a tiny underwater canyon where the coral walls rose like old ruins. As they got to about 60 feet, things started to change. Lyle, following the others, was startled to see a shadow in the distance. It was a massive hammerhead that measured easily 10 feet in length. As it moved slowly and deliberately through the water, the shark's unusual T-shaped head gave it an alien-like appearance. Lyle was initially captivated by it. Having never witnessed one up close, he lifted his camera to capture the moment. Although they were usually not aggressive, Lyle was unaware that hammerhead sharks were also highly inquisitive animals. Karsten was drawn to the shark's movements and promptly gave the others the all-clear to remain motionless and composed. Slowly but purposefully, the hammerhead circled them as the group watched in amazement as they floated in the water. Although the shark wasn't hunting, it was undoubtedly attractive. The divers watched as the hammerhead approached, its black, unblinking eyes scouring them to determine if they posed a threat or were potential prey. Karsten was aware of the shark's low propensity for attack, but he also recognized the unpredictable nature of wild animals. He signaled the group to climb while continuing to monitor the shark slowly. Then, out of the blue, Lyle lost control of his spear gun. Due to his inexperience, he neglected to secure it properly. There was a clatter as the gun spiraled downward and sank into the depths of the water. The hammerhead was startled by the noise. Its idly circling evolved into something more concentrated and threatening. Now startled by the abrupt movement and sound, the shark shot with unexpected quickness in the direction of the divers. Karsten's heart raced as he signaled for the group to ascend faster, but not too fast. Panic could lead to mistakes, and mistakes could be fatal in a situation like this. They were free divers, meaning they had no tanks and no air supply beyond what they had in their lungs. Rick, ever the calm one, was at the back of the group, keeping an eye on the hammerhead. He knew the shark could charge at any time. It was now in attack mode, and the divers could set it off with any abrupt movement. The pressure was building not only from the shark but also from the necessity of getting to the surface before their air ran out. The following pass from the hammerhead was closer, far too near. The enormous body of the creature brushed against Tasha's fins as it passed right beneath her. Reflexively, she kicked out, which only enraged the shark. With a sudden turn of extreme speed, it circled back toward her. When Rick realized that Tasha was in danger, he grabbed her arm and pulled her up, pushing her to go up more quickly. Meanwhile, Lyle was having difficulty. He was out of breath from exerting too much energy in an attempt to get his spear gun back. He struggled to hold his breath and his chest burned. Karsten saw his distress and dove over, using all of his strength to push Lyle upward. The hammerhead was still pursuing them, even though they were getting closer to the surface. The shark made its last move as the group got closer to 20 feet below the surface. It lunged skyward, its jaws clenching as it pointed toward the divers. With no other choice, Rick grabbed the belt-mounted emergency flare. When he lit it, the shark was startled by the sudden heat and bright red light. The abrupt burst of light and noise confused the hammerhead, causing it to veer off at the last moment. Shouting for air, the divers broke the surface. Racing hearts and burning lungs, they clambered onto the boat. The hammerhead circled below a little while longer before vanishing as swiftly as it had emerged into the depths. The group was stunned into silence as they boarded. No one said anything for a few minutes as the seriousness of the situation dawned on them. Lyle, still trembling but alive, caught Karsten's eye. They almost lost everything due to his error, but they made it through and moved back to the shore. The group interpreted the event differently in the weeks that followed. As always, Rick dismissed it as another day at the beach, acting like a professional. But Tasha discovered that she was more wary of close calls on subsequent dives. The attack altered Lyle. Despite his fascination with marine life, he never went back to the ocean because of his fear. Karsten found that the dive was a sobering reminder that the sea was unpredictable and its creatures were wild regardless of one's level of experience. In the most horrifying way imaginable, the hammerhead, an ordinarily calm giant, had brought that fact home to them all. Experienced surfer Callan Voss ventured out into the warm waters off Folly Beach, South Carolina, on a calm morning in 2012 just as the sun was setting. The seaside town was well known for its popular surfing locations, laid-back atmosphere, and sporadic shark sightings, and it was only a short drive from Charleston. Callan had been surfing for more than 10 years. He was no stranger to the creatures that roamed the depths of the Atlantic. His pals made light of the fact that he felt more at ease on his board than he did on land. His daily schedule had always been the same. Get up before the sun came up, go to the beach, and ride the best waves before the masses arrived. The water was calm, almost uncanny that morning. The waves were just right for a leisurely session, small but consistent. There was only the rhythmic crash of the waves, the sporadic squawk of gulls, and a light sea breeze. Bull sharks were common in these waters because of their aggressive nature and capacity to survive in both fresh and salt water. Still, very few meetings developed into anything longer than a fleeting sighting. Callan's session had been uneventful for the first hour. His familiar rush of adrenaline accompanied each wave as he skimmed over the swells with ease. He could see the sandy bottom below from his spot atop his surfboard, and the water was clear. A sudden jolt from underneath knocked Callan off his board. Disoriented and confused, he struck the water hard. He briefly believed that he had been wholly destroyed, which was a common enough occurrence. But as he reached for his board, a shadow moved beneath him. It was enormous, far too big to be a fish or a dolphin. He was suddenly overcome with a cold, primordial fear upon realizing it was a bull shark. This time, the shark made a powerful attack. Callan felt a sharp pain shoot through his body as its strong jaws clamped down on his leg. Blood gushed from the wound, turning the water surrounding him red. In an attempt to dislodge the predator, he kicked out of instinct. His surfboard was floating close by, but each time he went to grab it, the shark dragged him farther down the water. Nothing, even though Callan had read about shark attacks previously, could have prepared him for the sheer terror of being pulled down into the depths by one of the most dangerous predators in the ocean. Bull sharks, he knew, were especially ferocious and rarely let go of their prey once they locked on. In an attempt to rip more skin off Callan's leg, the shark thrashed and twisted. Even though his muscles were screaming in pain, he knew he wouldn't be able to resist and would not survive. Callan reached for his surfboard in a desperate attempt. Using it as a makeshift shield, he pulled it between him and the shark. With its lifeless, icy eyes fixed on its prey, the shark circled him. It approached closer with each pass, testing the waters and waiting for the ideal opportunity to strike once more. In addition to feeling weaker, Callan's leg was ripped and gushing blood. It was too soon for him to give up. The shark made another pass, and this time it lunged at him. Callan used his board to defend himself and deflect the blow. The shark slammed into it with incredible force, nearly knocking him off balance. But the board held, and Callan used the momentary distraction to paddle furiously toward the shore. There was nothing else he could do, even though he knew he was still far from safety. The once calm and inviting beach now appeared incredibly far away. Each stroke was a battle. His injured leg slowed his progress, and the blood trail he left behind only fueled the shark's pursuit. Callan sensed the predator lurking just below the surface, waiting for the right opportunity to pounce once more. Stopping was not an option for him. Every second was measured. The shark circled again, but it did not attack right away. Callan was aware that before making a kill, sharks frequently test their prey. It was waiting for him to get tired or make an error. He paddled harder, his arms burning from exhaustion, his heart racing. There was no one else in sight, and the shore was still too far away. He was utterly alone. Nevertheless, something changed afterward. Callan noticed several fish swimming close by, probably attracted to the blood in the water as the shark made another pass. Drawn by the simpler meal, the shark lost its way and swerved. Callan took the chance and paddled with newfound vigor. The shark's focus was returning to him. He could feel it, but there was a small window of opportunity because of the brief diversion. Callan's hands finally made contact with the sandy bottom a few minutes later. He stumbled to his feet and limped toward the shore, dragging his surfboard along. Although his leg was in a terrible state, with deep gashes extending from his knee to his ankle and blood still seeping from the wound, he was still breathing. His head still racing from the encounter, he collapsed onto the sand, gasping for air. Not until a few minutes later did another surfer see him and come to his rescue. After Callan's injuries from the shark's strong jaws were assessed, medical professionals dispatched emergency personnel to the scene and transported Callan to the hospital. Although the wounds would eventually heal, he would never forget that morning. Callan's story spread like wildfire among South Carolina surfers in the years that followed. Although he was more cautious going forward, his experience changed his outlook. But he never allowed fear to keep him from pursuing his passions. In the end, the sea remained his home despite all of its beauty and peril. In the early summer of 2011, in the rugged coastal town of Kaikoura, New Zealand, two friends set out on a kayaking trip that would become the most harrowing experience of their lives. Kaikoura, a small town on the eastern coast of New Zealand's South Island, was known for its breathtaking landscapes, a place where mountains meet the sea. The deep waters just offshore were teeming with marine life, from pods of dusky dolphins to enormous sperm whales. Beneath the surface, the Kaikoura Canyon dropped sharply, creating a unique ecosystem that drew both scientists and adventurers alike. On this particular day, the weather was perfect: clear skies, calm seas, and a gentle breeze coming off the Pacific. The two friends, Torin Lowry and Eamon Rook, had been planning this kayaking trip for weeks. Both men were avid outdoorsmen, though neither had much experience in the ocean. They were drawn to Kaikoura by its reputation for close encounters with wildlife, hoping to spot dolphins or fur seals and perhaps even a rare glimpse of a whale from their kayaks. Torin, a tall and wiry man in his mid-30s, had grown up in the bush, more comfortable hiking through dense forests than paddling over deep blue waters. Eamon, a few years younger and stockier, had spent more time fishing than kayaking, but he was up for the adventure. They rented 2 sea kayaks from a local outfitter and set off from South Bay, paddling north along the coastline just outside of the Kaikoura Peninsula. The first hour was peaceful. Schools of fish could be seen darting beneath them in the glistening clear water, and the cliffs rising from the shoreline provided a striking backdrop. They moved at a slow pace, pausing now and then to admire the scenery or take photos. Everything appeared to be ideal. However, as they traveled further, something changed. It was Torin who saw the shadow moving silently and quickly beneath the water. He initially believed it to be just a big fish, possibly a ray sliding through the deep. The shadow was moving toward them, though, and it was getting bigger and more distinct. Eamon, focused on keeping his paddle stroke steady, didn't notice the creature at first. But as soon as Torin realized what it was, a chill went down his spine. It was a mako shark. Not just any mako, but an enormous one, measuring about 10 feet in length with a sleek body that could slice through the water at an incredible speed. Whispering to Eamon, pointing to the shadowy figure below the surface, Torin attempted to remain composed, but his voice faltered. With its icy black eyes fixed on the moving paddles, the shark's dorsal fin broke the surface of the water just as Eamon turned to watch. The splashing attracted the shark, who thought it was prey moving erratically. The shark initially kept a safe distance, slowly and deliberately circling the kayaks. Torin and Eamon paddled faster, attempting to get nearer to the coast while minimizing noise. Nevertheless, the sharks grew restless the more they paddled. The shark narrowed the gap with every paddle stroke. It began to dart toward them, then veer away at the last moment as if testing their defenses. The water churned as its powerful tail propelled it forward in quick bursts of speed. Without warning, the shark made its move. It surged forward and bumped the side of Eamon's kayak with a violent jolt, nearly capsizing it. Eamon let out a startled yell, barely managing to keep his balance. But the shark wasn't done. It turned back and hit again, hitting harder this time. Eamon found himself thrown into the water when the kayak toppled. Torin watched his friend splashing frantically in an attempt to stay afloat, and panic set in. The mako, sensing the thrashing, turned its attention to Eamon. It circled him with terrifying speed, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife. Torin could see the shark's sleek body beneath the surface, moving with deadly precision. Eamon struggled to get back to his overturned kayak, but the shark was too close. Every time he moved, the shark darted closer, its jaws snapping just inches from his legs. Torin knew they didn't have much time. He paddled furiously toward Eamon, his heart pounding in his chest, desperately trying to distract the shark. In a moment of clarity, Torin remembered the advice the kayak rental operator had given them. If a shark attacked, they should try to make themselves as unappealing as possible. He grabbed his paddle and began slapping it against the surface of the water, creating loud, erratic splashes. The noise seemed to confuse the shark, who paused, relentlessly circling for a moment. That was all the time Eamon needed. He managed to haul himself halfway onto his kayak with a last-ditch effort, his legs still hanging in the water by grabbing hold of his kayak. The shark returned its focus to Torin after noticing the disturbance. With its mouth gaping and its razor-sharp teeth sparkling in the sunlight, it lunged toward his kayak. When Torin was about to be hit, the shark suddenly swerved off course once more, making a broad arc around him. It was pushing them to the edge and playing with them. By this point, both men were worn out and their muscles ached from fending off the shark. They were unable to give up, though. The shark was not showing any signs of retreating, and they were still quite far from the coast. With Torin following closely behind, Eamon paddled as quickly as he could in his kayak despite his trembling condition. The shark trailed behind them, its fin slicing through the water like a menacing sign. Now and then, as though attempting to reroute them into more secure waters, it would dart toward them. However, the sharks became more hesitant as they approached the coast. When they finally arrived at the shallows, it felt like hours, but it was really only minutes. With hesitancy, the shark glided slightly over the waves, showing reluctance to pursue them into the crashing waves. With a final burst of energy, Torin and Eamon paddled onto the stony shore, their kayaks scraping the rocks as they fell breathless and trembling, but still alive and unhurt. As they lay there on the beach, struggling to breathe, the truth of what had happened started to set in. They had survived an encounter with one of the ocean's most fearsome predators. For hours afterward, they sat on the shore watching the water, half expecting the shark to appear again. In the days that followed, the story of their close call spread through Kaikoura, and they became minor local celebrities. But for Torin and Eamon, the experience left a more profound mark. They had come face to face with the raw, untamed power of nature, and they knew they would never take the ocean for granted again. Years later, whenever they retold the story, they would always end with the same conclusion. The sea, for all its beauty, was not a place to be underestimated. The Mako had served as the scariest possible reminder of that to them. In 2013, life glistened in the azure waters of Australia's Great Barrier Reef, extending as far as the eye could see. Located off the northeastern coast of Queensland, the reef stretched for over 2,300 kilometers, making it the largest living structure on Earth. The reef was a vibrant tapestry of coral gardens home to thousands of marine species. It was a popular destination for both tourists and marine enthusiasts who came from all over the world to witness its stunning biodiversity. Beneath the surface, however, the reef was also a place where nature's more dangerous inhabitants lurked, particularly the territorial reef sharks that patrolled their hunting grounds with a silent but deadly precision. On one warm day, a lone snorkeler named Anton Hargrave was about to experience this darker side of the reef. With a love of the sea, 32-year-old Australian Anton had gone snorkeling by himself to discover the colorful coral formations on the reef. A few hundred meters away, his boat, a simple rental called Sea Breeze, was anchored and swaying gently in the tide. Lost in the kaleidoscope of colors below him, Anton ventured farther from the boat than he had planned. Although he wasn't a rookie in these waters, he wasn't an expert either. But he had disregarded the advice of many experienced divers who advised against snorkeling the reef's deeper sections by themselves. Anton was in awe of the beauty of the coral below as he glided through the water, the sun shining through in golden shafts. Everything seemed peaceful, but the reef had its own rules and its own predators, and Anton was unknowingly infringing on the territory of one of them. A couple of meters below, a reef shark, a species known for its territorial nature, had taken notice of Anton's presence. The shark, about 1.5 meters long, wasn't the largest predator in these waters, but it was plenty dangerous. Reef sharks were known to be particularly aggressive when they felt their domain was being violated. The area had probably been designated as a hunting ground by this particular shark, and Anton, an unknown figure hovering above, was probably seen as an intruder. Continuing to float farther away from the boat, Anton was oblivious to the shark's increasing anger. He was now a reasonable distance away from Sea Breeze, and there was no longer any indication of the vessel's safety. It wasn't until a flicker of movement caught his peripheral vision that Anton realized he wasn't alone. He turned his head slowly, his heart rate spiking as he spotted the unmistakable silhouette of a shark gliding towards him from below. Though fearful at first, Anton knew enough about sharks to know that abrupt movements could set off an attack. While his mind raced to figure out the best course of action, he forced himself to remain calm. The shark was getting closer, its movements more erratic, and the boat was too far away to reach in a sprint. Anger was evident in this classic display. Reef sharks exhibited a peculiar zigzag swimming pattern when they were agitated, their bodies twitching to determine whether to attack. With slow, deliberate strokes, Anton started to swim back towards the boat, trying to avoid attracting the shark's attention more. The shark, though, was not giving up. It began to circle Anton a distance away, getting closer with each loop. Its sleek gray body moved with an unnerving speed as Anton saw it dart beneath him, its dorsal fin slicing through the water. One could feel the tension in the water. Every instinct in Anton begged him to swim more quickly, but he refused. The last thing he wanted to do at this point was set off a full-blown attack, and he knew that erratic movements would resemble prey behavior. His thoughts whizzed over everything he knew about reef sharks. Keep your cool, avoid splashing, and project as much of your body as you can. But there was a big difference between knowing these things and actually doing them while a predator was only inches away. The shark became more daring as Anton swam steadily and slowly. It darted closer, its snout brushing against Anton's flipper. A surge of adrenaline shot through him as he kicked gently, trying to guide the shark away without spooking it. In response, the shark circled once more faster, this time flicking its tail in annoyance. Even though Anton's boat was still too far away, he could now make out the tiny, excruciatingly tiny in the distance. For a split second, Anton thought about diving down to the reef to hide among the coral, figuring the shark might be less likely to pursue him into the confined areas. But diving deeper would only delay his return to the boat and expose him to more dangers. His best option was to continue his calm retreat towards Seabreeze. As he neared the halfway point back to the boat, the shark made a sudden, aggressive move. It shot forward, its teeth bared in a flash, but it stopped just short of Anton's leg. The shark was testing him, perhaps deciding whether this strange, slow-moving intruder was worth attacking. Anton's heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. Even as the shark kept swimming around him in a menacing dance, he remained calm and slow. Anton finally made it to the side of his boat after what seemed like hours, but had only been minutes. His fingers trembled as he grasped the ladder and hauled himself up. The shark made one last pass beneath him, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife before disappearing back into the depths of the reef. Anton collapsed onto the deck of the boat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He had made it. The shark had stalked him and tested him, but ultimately it had let him go. As he sat on the deck staring out at the vast expanse of water, Anton knew that he had been lucky. The encounter left him shaken but alive, and with a newfound respect for the power and unpredictability of the ocean. In the years that followed, Anton never snorkeled alone again. He was never rid of the memory of that day, which served as a constant reminder that the Great Barrier Reef's natural beauty wasn't without risk.